And I was sort of saying this earlier. I know that for a lot of us, time is a precious and scarce resource, and the fact that you're here might have been a bit of a sacrifice or effort. So thank you. And you should be thankful to yourself as well, or pat yourself on the back or whatever. So I wanted my presentation to be pretty interactive, but I think because I do have a lot to cover, it will be not so interactive. I hope that's okay, and that my voice is not too annoying for all of you. So just as a way of starting things off, if you guys want to close your eyes or sort of get into a mental space where you can just sort of be imagining for just a moment. So just think of a period in your life which was the most painful. And this could mean it was very physically painful, or maybe it was an emotionally painful time for you. You probably won't be able to bring back the pain that you were feeling then. I know when I try to think back on my painful memories, it's like almost as if they were somebody else. But you're aware at least of how difficult that was for you. So now imagine there's someone else, and they're in that much pain every single day of their life. You don't know them, but you do know that they feel physical and emotional pain, just like you, and just like everyone you love. You also know that if you did get to know them, you'd probably develop a bond with them and a connection. Maybe not to the point of loving them, but to the point of caring about them and feeling some sort of warmth there. And now imagine that this someone, the suffering, that you play a role in causing it, and because you choose to. All right. I know that you guys can open your eyes if you want. I know that life is not easy for anyone. And I know that just by the odds of the number of people in this room, that there's some of you for whom life is very difficult. And I respect that. And I certainly never want to make life any more difficult for anyone. And yet, sometimes I do. Not because of being cruel, but because there are certain goals sometimes that I have that I think are important, such as choosing to go vegan. And sometimes, in order to find the motivation to make that choice, you first have to confront some uncomfortable emotions and maybe some inconvenience as well for a brief period of time. So I'm ambivalent about it. About how to walk that line between not hurting anyone and encouraging others to make choices that cause less suffering. So I'm both sorry and not sorry at the same time. So history really shows that human beings, when we're raised in a society in which something unethical is the norm, we tend to be pretty blind to the fact that this thing is unethical, and we tend to engage in it rather mindlessly because we were raised that way from day one. So one example could be wife beating, which still happens obviously, but thankfully not such a norm anymore. But when it was a norm, men engaged in it all the time and just didn't even really think about it, didn't really consider themselves a bad person. And in fact, they probably a lot of really good men, or men who were good in other ways, or were all decent people, this really hurtful practice just because they had never questioned it. So they were both guilty and innocent at the same time. Because basically they were brainwashed into thinking that it wasn't really a big deal. Same thing with any horrible thing you can imagine, whether it's slavery, lynching. And I'm not sitting here, I know it's very controversial to compare the crimes and suffering and brutality of animals to that of people. I'm not doing that. What I want to compare is the mentality of thinking something's no big deal because you're raised with it. Now, most of us were raised from babies eating meat, eating animal products, dairy, eggs. So we just never question it. But I think we should. And just as hard as it was for people like living during slavery times to think, hey, maybe it's probably as hard for us. So even though I think it's horrible to choose not to be a vegan, at the same time I don't think that people who choose not to be vegan are horrible people, because that's just our culture, and it's like we don't know any. It's hard for us to get outside of that box and our conditioning. So basically, if I sound harsh today, I want everyone to know that I have a lot of love for everyone in this room. I have a lot of faith in the decency of your hearts. I assume everyone here is a good, hearted person. And if I really got to know you, I would be quite awed by how ethical you are in a lot of ways. I think the first thing that we need to really put on the table and acknowledge is that not being a vegan is a choice. People often, they ask vegans, like, why do you choose to be vegan? And to me, like, the question should be put the other way around. Why do you choose not to be vegan? Okay, there are people in this world who it's not a choice for them to be a vegan or not. For example, indigenous people whose way of life involves foraging, hunting, and gathering. It's not a choice for them. People who are so desperately poor and also living in a society which does not have food banks and even a basic welfare infrastructure. For them, well, most of their diet is not animal products because they're expensive. But to me, if you're that desperate for food, I'm not going to criticize you for eating anything you get your hands on. I want you to survive, but it's not my place to tell you anything. But I would bet that everyone in this house right now, maybe I'm wrong about a couple of people, but I would wager my money that everyone here could be vegan if they choose to. So if you're not a vegan, it's because you're choosing not to be one. Many non-vegans convince themselves that they have no choice. I've encountered this a lot. They're too poor, they're too busy to figure out nutrition or to these new meals and cooking and all that. And it's just a denial of the truth in almost every case. I know vegans in many different circumstances. Vegans with food allergies to like soy or wheat. Vegans with extremely busy lives and very little time to cook. I have a vegan friend who's so poor that she's on welfare and has to rely on the food bank a lot of the time. She also engages in freeganism, like dumpstering non-vegan food, but in terms of her purchases, we're all vegan. So it's just, there's not an excuse, really, except for if you're living in a war zone or something like that. But for people in this room, probably I really doubt there's a legitimate excuse. Especially like if you're here, it means you're somehow connected to people in this house. And I know for the vegans here, myself and a lot of others, we really want you to go vegan, and we will help you. We have tons of information on nutrition. Anyone, if you want to give me your email address, I can send you like a whole package on nutrition, recipe ideas, everything like that.